you write an opposition, you get fired up, and you like start typing like things, that you probably would never say in person, and then you're
Yeah.
like, you
Just
never go
wait till I see you next time. Wait till I
back.
see you outside the courthouse. Welcome to another episode of the Jobology podcast. I'm your host, Brandon. Today, my guest is Sabrina. She is a family law attorney in Las Vegas, Nevada. And first, before we get started, just thank you for being with me today, Sabrina.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Appreciate it. First question we always start with now is if you had to describe your job in 1 to 2 sentences, how would you describe your job?
I guess I would probably say you do a lot of reading and writing in my job,
Okay.
and potentially also oral argument depending on the type of lawyer that you are. But in my job, you also have to go to court and do some oral argument as well.
Yeah, court seems like I mean, as somebody who's not an attorney, has no idea what any of that stuff, I think of court as like, I'm gonna try and avoid this at all costs. Like, let me figure out a way to not see a judge.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And I assume better
Okay.
than everything outside of court.
Yeah. Okay. And then first question I have for you here is in family, like so law in general, I feel like there's a lot of challenges. Whether you're criminal, family, litigation, estate planning, whatever it is, there's probably a lot of challenges. What challenges are unique to family law that maybe don't apply to other types of law?
Our primary challenge is the personal aspect of law because we deal with a lot of people in like their most vulnerable instances of life, so like they're going through divorce. It's not a good time for them. It's not a good time for the children. Everyone's kind of, going through a hard time. And I think in a lot of different other areas of law, you don't have to deal with the real personal issues of people just dealing with the worst times of their life. So I'd say that's
Sure.
probably the biggest challenge. Attorney become kind of drained emotionally sometimes dealing with all those issues and having to kind of, you know, be there for every client. But I mean, I enjoy being there and like kind of being a voice for them and supporting them, but it is very emotionally draining.
Is it if I'm recently married, not planning on going through divorce, anything like that. But if I was, is it always something like, do I have to get an attorney if it's an amicable divorce? Like if we both decided, hey, this isn't, marriage is not working out, whatever, do I still have to go get an attorney or is it only if it's like, for lack of better terms, an ugly divorce?
No, I mean, so you don't need an attorney for an amicable divorce. I would always recommend talking to somebody. So a lot of times, like we'll do telephone consultations with people without charging them, and at least you can speak to an attorney about what's going on, what the issues are that are going to be addressed in the divorce, and you can kind of get somebody's perspective and whether or not you do need to retain an attorney. But most states actually have like different organizations that kind of provide the templates or like the kind of the route that you need to take in order to do a divorce on your own. So it's totally possible, but I would always recommend at least speaking to an attorney that even if it's a couple $100 and you kind of just get their view on things that you don't really understand about the law. I think
Mhm.
that's super beneficial, but it's not necessary to actually retain an attorney.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. That sometimes, there's no blanket answer, unfortunately. It's situation to situation. Um, in general, as a lawyer, okay, before we get to attorney, lawyer, is there a difference? Should I be saying one? They're interchangeable.
They're both the same. Yep.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, I keep saying attorney, and then maybe I should be saying lawyer. I don't know. Okay. In general, as an attorney, can you tell when your client's lying?
Sometimes yes. So sometimes
Okay.
in a meeting and oh, I mean, I've gotten this question several times, do you want the truth or do you want a certain answer? And I'm like, no, please tell me the truth. Like, you get that a lot as an attorney, like, because people, I guess, kind of understand that there's a right way to answer a question and they don't necessarily want to tell you the truth. So I always kind of get a little suspicious when they ask me that question because I'm like, well, if you're asking me about this, are you going to lie about the next thing? So based on how they answer questions, you can kind of see who is potentially going to not be completely honest with you. cannot say that I know 100% all of the time when somebody's not being honest with me, but I guess it's just observing their body language, how they
Yeah.
answer, how long they take to answer, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, it's like, "Where were you on this?" End? It's like, let me decide. Where was I?" And then the follow-up to that one kind of is like, do you have to believe them?
No, so okay, so whenever a client comes into my office and they start telling me a story, I especially the attorneys in our office, we give a lot of pushback. Where if something
Okay.
doesn't make sense or doesn't quite add up, we're like, okay, like, oh, well, why did you do this? Or what do
Mhm.
you mean, this other person did this? Like, explain that more. We'll do a lot of pushback. And that kind of gets people to, oh, okay, like they have to really explain their story. They're not just going to tell us a story and we're just going to absorb everything they say and just, repeat it back to the judge. That's not how it works in our firm. We question them. We act as if we're going to be the opposing counsel because we're going to, we tell them, hey, this is what they're going to be questioning. This is what they're going to be pointing out about the holes in your story. So it's, always question your client and always tell them what the opposing counsel is going to do because that's why you're doing it. And, more times than not, you get them to tell the complete story as opposed to the version that they want you to hear.
That's good. Okay, yeah. I was kind of as you were saying that, I was like, "Oh, it's kinda like," I mean, in a much less stressful, more fun kind of way. That's what I do is, I kinda try and think of questions that I wanna ask you guys, the guests, and then I try and kind of think, "Okay, what are the possibilities they could answer?" So that I then know, "Okay, if they answer this, I'm gonna go down this path. If they answer this, I'm gonna go this way," whatever. It seems kind of similar-ish of like, "Hey, we gotta figure out what's going on. What's the other side gonna do? And then let's kind of, create our game plan from there."
Exactly, and you always wanna be prepared for what the other side's gonna do. So
Yeah,
I think it's always beneficial to push back on your client's story and to ask them about the holes and the things that don't make sense and the inconsistencies because it's gonna come out
gotcha.
regardless.
Yeah, okay. And then last kind of family law-ish question, then we'll get into the rest of the podcast here. You kind of mentioned it up top of like, "Oh, it's not that fun of a time because 'cause you're going through divorce." Is that the main reason people need a family lawyer is divorce?
Well, there's a bunch of different issues. So, divorce, custody issues are the ones that are recurring, right? Because if you get a
Mhm.
divorce, you divide your assets and your debts and whatnot, and sometimes custody is at stake in divorce. However, it's kind of like a several months to a couple year period, and then you're divorced and it's done. Custody issues can pop up over time for 18 years, especially if you
Yeah,
get divorced when the child is young and their entire minority, the courts kind of have jurisdiction to hear custody and support issues. So those ones can be recurring and they can pop up several times. So I would say still, though, that we handle, I think, primarily divorces rather than recurring child custody issues. I think a lot of parents kind of figure out that going back to court over and over again and hiring attorneys for every custody issue becomes very expensive. So
yeah,
they start to learn how to work out their issues on their own. So I would say primarily we do divorce. However, there's like, you can do prenuptial agreements as well. There's kind of like other aspects of family law that I don't really practice, but that you can do, like, guardianship, adoption.
would, like, emancipation go through family law?
I don't do that, but it's kind of similar. Again, kind of like there's like these branches that are very similar to family law, but they're not technically, divorce child custody issues. But
Got it.
I do know a lot of family law attorneys who do also practice those other areas.
Okay. Um Not that you're a therapist, not that this is, your professional advice, but, as somebody that sees, I would assume, a lot of divorce, is there like a common thread throughout, clients of like, typically it seems to be this issue that people are getting divorced over?
Not really. I mean, I would say that there are a few things that just always pop up, like finances. Maybe, there's issues with spending money or not making enough money and then
Sure.
overspending. Um, I mean, it's just, it's not, there's not like one issue,
Gotcha.
sometimes it's infidelity, sometimes it's just people didn't get along, they just can't get along and they'd rather
Yeah.
just divorced,
Just grow
so
apart.
I don't think it's like a main issue, it's just, several different ones.
Okay. I mean, hey, figure if you had the answer, I was like, hey, I can't not ask the question. If you're
I
like,
mean,
actually, it's this. Just don't do this thing and you're fine. Like,
no, it's all the
but
things that come into play in a normal relationship, finances, trust, infidelity, respect,
mhm.
all those things,
Okay. that makes sense, man. Sorry, listeners, I didn't figure it out. Sorry, next part. So, something that I think is very valuable information for people to know a lot is how do you actually get said job? Whether we're talking to, an attorney, teacher, whatever it is, like how do you actually get your job? So, my best guess, and you can fill in the blanks here, but I'm assuming you have to go to law school. I'm assuming you have to graduate. I'm assuming you have to pass a bar. I think I don't quite know exactly how that works. So if you could kind of walk us through the process of like how do you become a lawyer and then from there how do you get a job at a law firm?
So I think in every state you have the option of going and getting your 4-year degree and then going to law school. I do not know other states. In Nevada, you have to go to law school and you have to pass the bar, become an attorney. I think in other states there's like apprenticeship that you can do.
Yeah, with a judge or something, I think.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of
Mhm.
it 'cause I don't believe that they do it here in Nevada, but in other states there are other options apart from going to law school, I believe. But don't quote
Yeah.
me on that.
I know real quick, just as a fun piece of advice, because I like to flex the things I know. In Wisconsin, once you graduate, you've passed the bar. There is no bar exam, there is no apprenticeship. I only know that because my brother, but once you pass the bar, once you graduate law school, feel free to start practicing.
In
Like, mm.
Wisconsin,
In Wisconsin only. Yes. Yes,
though.
only in Wisconsin. Sorry.
Yeah, as far as I know in Nevada, you have to go to law school, you have to pass the bar.
Do you have to go to law school in Nevada? Or can you go to like any law school?
You can go to any law school in any state. I mean, I could, take the bar in any now that I've gone to law school, I can take the bar in any other state, and if I pass, then I'm a licensed to practice law there.
Gotcha. Okay. So then we go to law school. We do our 2 years, 3 years,
3 years.
3 years. We do our
3 years
3 years.
full time, 4 years
Okay.
part-time.
Okay. We let's say we're going full time because I'm not trying to stretch law school out any longer than it has to be. So go to law school 3 years. Graduate. Is there like a internship portion of the law school where you go, oh, I got to start interning at firms to see like what kind of law I want to practice, and then from there, what?
Yeah, I mean, you can start typically, most people in law school start looking for externships or internships the summer after the first year of law school. So I did an externship at UNLV, the general counsel's office, at my first summer after my first year of law school. That's just to kind of, get some experience in the field. You can even, go into different law firms or different practice areas to see if maybe that's something that you want to do. So I would say each summer, most law students are doing some kind of externship or internship to kind of see where they want to work. And a lot of
Okay.
times, the schools will host these like job fairs, I guess, for lack of a better word, where they kind of try to get students matched up with different law firms. And sometimes, based on the first, that first summer, you might end up working at that place when you graduate law school, 2 years later.
Do you have to like? This is again. Even with a brother going, I still don't know a lot of things. Do you have to declare like I'm a family lawyer, or do you just like you can practice whatever?
Nope, you don't have to declare.
Okay.
You don't even I didn't have any family law experience before I started working at my first law firm. I didn't even think I wanted to do family law, to be honest. That was not on
Hmm.
my radar of areas of law that I wanted to practice. But I started at a firm that kind of did a bunch of different areas of law. I got to work with a bunch of different attorneys, and then I kind of just, decided that that was what fit me best, and that's how I ended
Okay.
up in family law. But I had no prior experience coming out of law school with family law.
Well, that's not what I would have expected. I would have thought, hey, you gotta make your decision and then maybe even like take some classes specifically for that. But I guess you probably just take classes for everything as it is. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can in law school, you get to choose certain electives. So you can start
Mhm.
by saying, "Hey, I think I might like this law," and take a class on it, and then see if that's true, or if you just now know that you definitely don't want to practice in that area of the law. But yeah, you can
Okay.
you can try to figure out what you want to do in law school.
Gotcha. Okay. And then after we graduate, like, do we have a job lined up or is it something where you're like, oh, now that I've graduated, I got to go find a job? Or is it you've already probably got one in place?
So it depends. A
Mhm.
lot of people do have jobs lined up, from those that summer, internship or externship that they had after their first year of law school. Some people don't. I did not have a job lined up when I graduated law school. I think I started, and I don't even actually, I'm trying to think. I don't think I even applied for any job until after I took the bar, because the
Oh, wow.
bar studying for the bar was so intensive. It was like a full-time job. I don't think I even was like, I'm not going to focus on trying to find a job until after I take the bar, and then you can get hired as, like a law clerk for a law firm. And then once you pass the bar, you now become an attorney there. But so that's what I did. I did not have anything lined up, but a lot of people do.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So there's multiple paths. It's not like, hey, I just have to, law school, intern, work. It's like, hey, it could be a mixture of those things. Could be, a couple
Yep.
internships. Could be, maybe you don't have a job. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Good to know. Like, again, I think it's important for people to know of, hey, this is how you can do it. There's many ways, but okay. Um, what does an average day look like for you? So, for some professions that we talk to, this is hard to answer because they go, "Hey, every day is different." I don't really have an average day.
Mhm.
I'm assuming probably something along the same lines with you, but I have no idea. If you said, "Nope, every day is the exact same," it's like, "Oh, all right." And if you said every day is different, so, "Yep, all right." And I mean, I'm assuming there's probably differences in when you have to go to court versus when you don't. But an average day, kind of in the office, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so an average day, I'd probably honestly, I work from home a lot now ever since the pandemic happened. So I log on my computer, I check my emails, I look at my calendar to see what deadlines and what things I have to do for the day, and the week. Because obviously, you can't most of the time as an attorney, if I have a deadline for an opposition, I'm not going to know about it the day of. I'm going to be working on it like a week or two, in advance. So
Mhm.
typically, it's just seeing what I have on calendar for the week, seeing what I need to do, and then just going into my tasks and start going, okay, what's the most important thing that needs to get done today? Start working on that, go down the list. But most of the time, I am at my computer, reading, writing, uh, reviewing
Yeah.
documents, analyzing them, taking my notes for, prepping for trial, those kinds of things. So a lot of days do look the same. I wouldn't say the tasks are the same, but it's just I'm at
Mhm.
my computer, not I'm reading and writing.
Sure.
And then some
Okay.
days I have court. And again, ever since the pandemic, most hearings are now held via Zoom.
Oh,
So I can
cool.
appear for court from my home. I can go to work and I can appear from there, or I can go in person. But typically, I do most hearings from remotely, and then if it's a trial, you typically have to go in person. So
Sure. Okay. Interesting. Wow, that's so I mean, I don't know. I have this like TV show version of what an attorney is, and it doesn't really seem to be matching up to what an attorney, at least from my
yeah,
experience talking with you. As I was like, oh, I just figured you're in court like every other day, always
no.
down at the courthouse, always, hobnobbing with the judges or whatever. I don't know. But okay, interesting. And now with Zoom too, that's like a whole
Oh
new
yeah.
avenue. Interesting. Okay.
It's totally different, and honestly, I think the practice of law has changed so much since the pandemic, so I think a lot of older attorneys probably remember, like, the experience that you're talking about of being in court and actually,
Mhm.
talking with judges and their clerks and stuff. Like, we don't do that at all
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, unless it's like, the opposing counsel's there and I'm in a hearing, I don't just, like, talk to them,
Gotcha.
passing.
Sure. Are you friendly with when you say opposing counsel, that makes it seem to me as somebody who like I don't know, but I go back to like team sports. I'm like, I'm not friends with the other team. Like, no, like get out of here. Are you friend like is it like a friendly kind of competition? Is it like, nope, we don't talk to each other. You're, the opposite. Like, how does that what's the relationship between, the two attorneys?
So it's definitely personality based. I
Mhm.
am a person who prefers to get along with people and to be friendly. Like I am
Same.
overly kind and friendly and trying to not like get into spats with opposing counsel.
For
Um,
sure.
and definitely in person. I get a little bit more snarky in writing, and I think it's easier. Obviously, it's keyboard warriors. You write an opposition, you get fired up, and you like start typing like things that you probably would never say in person, and then you're
Yeah.
like, you
Just
gotta go
wait till I see you next time. Wait till I
back.
see you outside the courthouse.
Yeah, you might have to go back and read and make sure you're like, "Okay, like, I have to tone this down a little bit," but,
Yeah.
There is personality. I
Okay,
know a ton of people who have no problem being combative and aggressive. That's just not my personality. So,
got it.
it honestly depends, like, on each attorney.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense then. I was, I again, like I said, I have no idea, so I was assuming, hey, I don't talk to you, you don't talk to me, we do our thing, and hopefully I
Yeah.
beat you and we move on. Okay,
It does get tough sometimes. I will say there are certain, there's certain cases where you just get really fired up about it. Like you really you don't like the opposing counsel,
mhm,
I always remain respectful even if I don't enjoy working with somebody else. However, I don't try to cause more problems that need to be than there need to be. There's already
sure.
issues. So,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how you are, but I know that, like, me, it also depends how you come at me. Like, if you come at me friendly, then, like, "Oh, alright, I'll be friendly to you," but if you come at me like, "You did that, where your client," alright,
yeah,
time out. Alright, here we go, like, okay, got it. So,
absolutely.
it is a there's a dynamic to the relationship, it just kind of depends, got it.
Mhm.
Uh, Something that I think is important that, I think that people should know, I think it should be public knowledge to everybody, but I understand why it's not for certain things is pay and what people can make. And, when somebody says, I make a lot of money, like, I don't know what that means versus somebody says, I make no money. I don't know what that means. So is there a range you could give us for like what a family law attorney could make?
Well, I guess the range would be what I know I make, because I don't know what a ton of other attorneys make. So,
Sure.
so I started off, I think, at around $65,000 when I was first hired, in the first law firm that I worked at, and that was not family law specific. It was just, in a generic kind of like they practiced a bunch of different areas of law. And then up to what I'm making now. So I make, like, around $200,000 per year in
Wow.
salary, and then
Mm,
we get bonuses based on, hours worked and the amount of money that you bring in, because people don't always pay for all of the hours that you work. So bonuses are determined on and collected as well. But, I will say I work in a small law firm, so I there's 5 total attorneys in my law firm. So as an attorney, I'm assuming there's probably a lot more people who are, even like, I've been practicing for about 10 years. There's probably attorneys that make it, get a job at a huge national firm, and they're probably making close to what I'm making right now. So, area of law that, that matters. You can make a
sure.
lot more money if you're working for a national firm that's, a huge firm throughout the nation. They practice,
Yeah.
different areas of law. And I feel like family law firms tend to be small, typically. Typically, they're
Okay.
like, I mean, at least in Vegas, from my experience here in Vegas, it's like a handful of attorneys to maybe, close to 10 is, you're not seeing like the big firms for family law. But if you do go into other areas of law with bigger firms, you're probably going to make a lot more
Oh, okay. Well, that's good for people to know. Now, I
money.
think a lot of time, like, even I had, like, a little sticker shock. I'm like, "Wow, okay." But it's keep in mind, A, the amount of work, and B, the amount of money already spent to get to the position to be able to make that kind of money is, I'm assuming, is something where it's like, yeah, I might make a nice little chunk, but I also had to spend a nice little chunk to get to where I am.
Yeah, law school was not cheap. I did go the one of the cheapest routes with going to a law school here in Nevada, because compared to California, our law school was way cheaper. I think it was 20,000 my first year and 25,000 my second and third year, which was a fraction of what it would cost in California. It would have been like, I think, a minimum of $40,000 per year. And then I got to
That's
live with my
crazy.
family. So I didn't have, I didn't have living expenses that I would have had in California or other places.
Yeah, so it's just like if you're deciding, hey, I think attorney lawyer is the right route for me. It's just kind of taking all those things into consideration, figuring out a budget and being like, okay, if I'm stay at home, if I, maybe some people got to work a part-time job or something like that, but whatever your situation is, it's seeing but like, okay, at the end of this, there is, some financial gain that could be had. I just have to get through all the debt and, schooling and quote unquote nonsense sometimes. So, okay, got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Um, and then as like I'm assuming you guys get perks, benefits, like, dental, medical, all that, correct?
Yeah, so that's completely paid for by my firm, so that's another, a benefit. Um,
Do you have, like, retirement?
oh, yeah, yeah, so we do have a retirement, and then we have, like, they match up to, I think it's 3%, so that's just another little benefit that, they have. My last firm, I think they actually matched up to 9%. It was
Wow.
something, yeah, it was really high.
It seems like somebody made a mistake. Like, they put a 9 when they were supposed to put a 1 or something. It's like, "Wait, what?" Yeah.
Yeah, it was very generous.
And then all the attorneys went, "No, it says 9 on this paper, and I signed that. I know what it means."
Free money. If they're
Yep.
offering, you need to put it in so that they can match it.
Yeah, exactly. And then one before we get to the end of the podcast here where you can have your time, I have one other question that I think is important for people to know is work-life balance. So, seems kind of buzzwordy nowadays. Everybody's, "Oh, I gotta, work-life balance, work-life balance." As an attorney, is it like, do you get to shut off when the day is done? I mean, I was gonna say when you get home, but if you're working from home, then is there like 5 o'clock hits and I get to turn the computer off, or is it I have to take calls and emails and whatever throughout the day?
So that's probably one of the biggest issues I have with my profession is that you are kind of expected. I mean, deadlines are deadlines. If
Yeah.
you have a deadline, sometimes you have to work late. Sometimes, if you're prepping for trial, there's no shutting off.
Mhm.
You're prepping for as much as you need to do. So work-life balance is hard in the sense that we don't control the deadlines and somebody files a motion, you have 14 days to respond. So it's
Yeah.
like somebody files a motion today. Now I have a new deadline coming up in 2 weeks that I didn't have before. So
Right. And if there was already a deadline on the thing for that, tough luck.
exactly. If I already had a
Ooh.
trial in 2 weeks, then, that's too bad. I mean, I should say, a lot of attorneys, especially in our field, are they are very generous with giving you extra time if you need it, especially if you have a
Mhm.
hearing that's 45 days out and, there's like some room for them to file their reply, then they'll give you extra time to do it. But that's the issue with our profession is that you just you can't control how much work. It's not an easy 9 to 5 job where I'm going to go in and just work this amount because
Mhm.
of the things that just come up without you
Yeah.
act, you know, that's I guess not, you sign on for it when you take a client, but you may not know that somebody has a motion in the works and you're going to be having to file an opposition. So
Got it.
it's one of the biggest issues that I have with my profession.
Yeah, I mean, every profession I think is gonna have like pros and cons. We kind of talk about pros and cons a lot, but of pros and cons, and unfortunately, one of that there are cons to these to jobs, and that could be one of them. Of like, yeah, I don't really get to like shut off. Unfortunately, it's just
So
when it comes in, it comes in. Okay. Well, that's about it I have for you on podcast realm. I appreciate you kind of sharing your time with us and sharing your experience with us. The last bit of the podcast I always like to leave for my guests to either talk about a cause, a promote something, or just something they want the viewer to know. So here's your time.
I mean, for all the attorneys out there, I always suggest that I think we have an obligation as attorneys, with the knowledge that we have and the ability that we have to help people to do pro bono work. So, that's huge. If you have the ability to help other people in your profession, regardless of whether it is, even if you're an attorney or not, and you can donate whatever little time that you have available to other people who would not otherwise be able to hire somebody in your profession, I strongly encourage it. It's very rewarding, and it's not very often that you get to use your expertise to help somebody else. So, I guess that's what I would suggest. Or
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that, I think of course, in every profession, there's the people that do the job because they want to be rich or make money or whatever. Of course. But I think most people get into what they want to do either because they see a need, they, like it, or like, either you, doctors, whoever, it's because I want to help people. Like that's the start. All the other things that come with it, sure. But the initial of like, well, why do I want to do that is, oh, I want to help. I want to see if I can help people. And so with that, it's like, oh, here's my opportunity to fulfill why I started this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's great, and I know that, like, coming from positions where I've had to, I had personally haven't had to hire attorneys in the oh, actually I have, but that's a whole other story. But, family stuff like that, I think that is a noble cause to be like, "You know what? Yes, making money, yes, getting your billables and all that stuff is great, but, it also feels good to like, "Oh, let me help you. Let me help you out here."
It's so rewarding, honestly. I mean,
That's awesome.
that's part of what I makes me love my job too, is that I can help
Yeah.
other people, and I can do some pro bono work.
Yeah.
I love my job, but helping the people who otherwise would not have a voice is very rewarding.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over it, but we usually talk about hidden perks sometimes, and, like, that seems to be, like, a perk of a job that maybe a lot of people don't get to have is, like, the seeing it through, and at the end, when your client goes, "Thank you so," like, you're like, "Oh, I get to see that accomplishment." Like, I saw it start to finish, and we finished it, and I did a great job, and, like, a lot of people in jobs, they don't necessarily get to see, like, the fruits of their labor per se.
Yeah. No, definitely as an attorney, I feel like one of the nice things is when you get to help somebody who otherwise like wouldn't stick up for themselves too,
Mhm.
or they're not they're hiring you or you're doing it pro bono, some people just have a very hard time advocating for themselves. And so you get to be that person who does that. And, I always tell people like if there's any issue, that you don't want to address on your own, like let me know, I'll handle it. Or just tell, the opposing party that your attorney's doing it. Like, I'm the
Yeah.
bad guy. Let me be the bad guy so that you
Mm.
don't feel, uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also the, like, one that's removed not emotional in the situation where it's like, "Hey, I have yes, you're my client, and yes, I want to, work for you, but, like, I don't have any emotion necessarily tied to this, so I can look at it from, like, the outside perspective and be like, "Alright.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time. You can send any billable hours to my accountant, and or maybe this could be my free consultation. Hey, whatever. But thank you for sharing your time with us today and sharing your experience.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Jobology podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys want to support our channel, please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at Jobology Podcast on all major social media platforms. Your support means everything. Like we say to end every episode, make good choices.